Dear colleagues, well, the headline is maybe obvious. It's all about data. Of course it is, because we are the process mining camp. Without data, we couldn't do process mining. I'm happy to present you two cases from our hospital. And my main topic is on data preparation, as you have heard in the speech from Anne before. But let's start where I'm working with. I used a different approach. I didn't want you to show all the corporate slides we have, so I present you one day at the hospital, at the University Hospital of Zurich, where I'm working with. I don't want to comment all the numbers, but as you can see, we're doing a lot. We're preparing meals. Well, you can see 5,500 meals. You see the sign of Ascona, which is a small village in our sunshine state, Ticino, we've probably heard of. And so we could provide each inhabitant of this village with food. If you do the numbers right, you see we have more than 8,000 employees, so not all employees are eating at our hospital. So maybe the food is not so good. No, I think that's not the case. But of course, there are other services available, a lot of people taking their food with them as they are working on shifts. And you can see here the TUE, so we use 40,000 gloves each day. So we can provide each student and each staff member of the university here at Eindhoven with 2 pairs of gloves. And that was even before the pandemic, so I think we're using more often. You see also there are 10 lectures given, one of which is happening right now here at Eindhoven. That's me. I will introduce you now with my team where I'm working with. I'm working with the team Business Development. We are reporting directly to the staff, or will belong to the staff, which is directly reporting to the executive board members. As you can see, it's a nice mixture of gender, of age, of experience, and I think that's the key element with our team. So we work together, we try to find some new creative solutions. And as you can see, we have a couple of fields. Most of them have an experience with business administration, of course, but we also have engineers. We have even architects, we have pharmacists, and we have people from healthcare industry. So that's a good mixture, and I think we can have each other have different meanings, different opinions, so we can go on from there. If you wonder why someone can work 24 years or more at the hospital, I think it's a mixture between curiosity and the complexity of the business itself. So it keeps you going. You might see from the function titles that we have 4 main fields, which is strategy, it's process, and it's projects. So we do also have the project portfolio, which we try to track and see if everything in budget on time. And of course, we are leading a lot of projects, the strategic projects where we want to bring the hospital any further. And that's just a new department. Oh, sorry. That was a mistake. A new department is sustainability. It doesn't mean that all these 2 people just do all the sustainability things within the hospital, but we're trying things to put together. You can see us in another setup. Actually, it was a festivity after the pandemic, which our company did for all the employees. So we could sit together to have a chat to each other, to meet other people from other departments in an environment where you usually don't meet them. You could talk about other things, have some fun together. But this also means, as we are not working as a team together very often, we're usually working in different projects, so we don't see each other that often. It's an opportunity to meet again, and we do that also in after work hours, or some doing sports, going to the gym. But let's present you 2 cases from the hospital. Our first case is a reorganization case. So you have to imagine these numbers representing medical divisions within our unit. So it has been decided we reduce these divisions from 9 to 3. Why wanted we to do that? Because we wanted to strengthen the line of command to empower the chief medical officer. And they decided, well, we need to recruit some co-directors, and 3 is a good number. So actually, this is how it started. They didn't think a lot about, should they really work together? Have they common processes? Of course, they were working we had data, we knew head count, we knew which organ they are treating and this stuff. But the main reason was to empower the line of command. So they came up with a proposition. They worked mainly with the org chart. It's like moving boxes. If you have an org chart in front of you, it seems to be quite easy. I take this box from there, put it there. Then there were some issues with some clinics. We're not sure, are they in the right place? Are they really working together in this new division? Some clinics said, well, at least top management was involved. We don't think we belong to this new division. I think we belong to another division. And so the idea came up, we could use process mining to show the interactions between the units. So the task was quite clear. Show how the clinics interact with each other and decide in which division they really belong to. But of course, there were a lot of questions to be asked. Well, how can we do that? Do we have data that does show these interactions? I was relatively new in the field of process mining. Actually, I just had a trial license of Disco. I've done an online course, which is available at Coursera, and that was all my knowledge in process mining. Well, I said, well, we can try, but there were other challenges as well. We were asked to provide fast answers, literally within days. And there was a kind of secrecy with this project. Only top management was involved, so I couldn't ask a lot of questions, especially not with the units which we were talking about. And there also were problems with the available tools. As Anne showed you, I'm more from the process or supporting side, and I don't have a lot of data knowledge, at least some. So I had to use our clinical data warehouse, which is from SAP, and the connection was via Business Explorer in an Excel 32-bit. And we never had worked before with activity recordings, so that's the data we chose because we thought it would be representative, but there were all other issues as well. Well, first, it was a lot of records. It was 4 million records. For Excel, this is quite a lot. And you can imagine me sitting at the desk, having Excel. You see this circle spinning, and everything is frozen, and you don't know if you will get a result or if you won't. So I had a lot of coffee breaks during this time because I didn't dare to work with something else, or I used another computer, of course. There was also the question, can we really use the data? Activity recordings, do we have to weight them? Is an activity where you order an analysis out of a urine sample or a blood sample? Is it the same weight as if you going for a surgery or assist with a surgery? We decided, well, we weight it equally and we maybe filter some of these activities out because it was already clear where the units belonged to, because one division was a supporting units, so all operating theaters, imagery, laboratories were put in this enabling division. So let's have a look at the data. As you can see, it's good. We have a case ID, so we can use it for mining. We also have a clinic, but this wasn't very useful because it's representing the clinic which has discharged the patient. It doesn't mean it's the clinic to be involved. And then we had an ordering unit and a delivering unit with the activity recordings. And we didn't have really a timestamp, we just had a date. So maybe it's not so useful for process mining, but that's all we had. And as the questions are more into interactions, we decided we can go with that because we don't need the correct sequence out of it, but we just wanted to show how they work with each other. But what was the problem is we had the ordering unit and the delivery unit on the same record. And we wanted to have that split apart because we wanted to show this one was the one which ordered the activity and the other one was which was providing it. Okay, so how we did it. So we had the records, actually, you can see B is followed by A, B is followed by A, C is followed by C, C is followed by A, and C is followed, no, other way around, genau. And so we had that initial record, so we duplicated it. So then we deleted the columns. We kept on one side the ordering unit, on the other side we kept the delivering unit, and we thought we could merge it together, but when we had an issue, now we have lost the sequence. Now the sequence is AA, BB, CC, which is not correct. So we introduced the sorting index, that's how we did it in Excel, and then we could sort with this additional index, and so we have the right sequence again. For those who are more into tables, I thought I should show you the tables as well, but actually it's the same process as how we did it. So let's jump to Disco to show you how the data looked like. So this was the initial data set. And you can see I'm on a really low zoom level with the activities and the paths. But at least we could identify that the clinics looked right. We see large clinics are represented more. Other clinics are represented less. So we thought maybe we could go on from there. But it was a very detailed level. If I would push the sliders, you can't read it anymore. So there's really spaghetti. So we decided we had to aggregate the data. We had also other granularity issues because the units, which I took out of the systems, they were not named. We didn't have a parent-child situation where I could see that, for example, this second line is belonging to the first line. So we actually had to do that. And as you can see, the naming was very different. So it's basically just the naming, but you can't see what it really likes. So you had to add the knowledge, what this really means. And so we decided to do additional data, as you heard from Anne before. And we chose to choose different aggregation levels. On the first aggregation level, you could see the unit, but we did differ if it differentiate. We differentiate if it's a stationary, an inpatient clinic, or if it's an outpatient clinic. On the second level is that it's only a unit because that's what the questions were, what we were asked for. We also provided some more data. We used filtering data, so to exclude. So it's easy to exclude some data sets because you have to exclude them before you import them into Disco, because otherwise you would exclude, for example, only the delivering unit and not the post, not the whole case. And I also added the new divisions. to find out if they really interact each other and if they fit into the division or if there are a lot of cross-divisional activities. So this was the original record, which I took out of system, and then I enriched it with the aggregation levels and fit them again into this, which I'm showing you now. So that you can see the data more clearly, I've chosen to jump into one clinic, which is the clinic for cardiology, as process mining is a matter of heart, which I'm showing you now. So now we have the aggregation level 1 on the clinic of cardiology, and we could see that it's mainly interacting with units which are the same units within the whole clinic. So we can see that usually the clinic is ordering, and then some others like these echoes. So if you do an echo for your heart, is providing it. And we have also this stationary unit, which here is HGT Abteilung, which means that's the ward where patients are treated. So we could see some, but of course you can see activity slide is now all up, but passes is still on 0. So if you would adjust that slider, it would be even more difficult to see, and we already have spaghetti. So if we go to this aggregation level 1, where we show interactions between clinics, you now have a much clearer build. You can even add some more passes, but still, it was very difficult who interacts with whom. As you can see here, if I go up, there's a lot of interaction going on. And so it's not really clear where these interactions are, where they are going to. So we decided to take a different approach. So we introduced another case ID. We didn't have the case, so we didn't have another case ID as Anne has shown. So we basically said, well, we don't look at the medical case or the administrative case, but we take each ordering and delivery unit as one order. So actually we created a new order ID. And with that order ID, we fit it again into Disco, which I'll show you next. And now oops, sorry. So now we have a much clearer picture of which clinic interacts with another clinic. And actually these slides were so convincing that the people never doubted the data. We were always anxious that they were asking, what data are you using? Well, this data can't be true. We don't trust this data, which usually happens if you come with data in a hospital because of other issues, which I will tell you later. And so we could show them with this analysis which clinic interacts with which, and we could give a recommendation. But the recommendation doesn't have to be followed. So there were other reasons, political reasons, where we put clinics into Division 2, even if they show no interaction with another clinic, but they were working in the same field. And actually, they were taking patients from each other. So that was the reason. So it was a political reason to put them together and have them under one line of command. And maybe you can adjust the services which they are offering, or to make sure that they don't get patients from each other. Let's jump to the second case. This case is much different. We are working in a project where the task was, how do we know when people actually are leaving or entering the hospital, and especially within the hospital, where they are coming from. Are they coming from an intensive care unit? Are they coming from an intermediate care unit? Are they coming directly from the operating theater? So these questions we couldn't answer before. Of course, people working in front, they had a, let's say, a guesstimation where people come from, but they wanted to. There was also a regulation that all patients, inpatients, had to be discharged by 10. And we tracked that. We could track discharge time, but we didn't know reasons why they were discharged late. We didn't know actually people already coming from other units before 10, so maybe 10 is too late, but we knew some examinations are going on before 10, so maybe 10 is a little bit straightforward. And so we tried to answer these questions with DISCO. The taskbars show individual patterns on admission and discharge time on wards. We were actually analyzing only the wards with inpatient clinics and identify the units where they come from and where they are going to. So again, task was quite clear, but we had an issue with the records. I don't know if you are a lot familiar with the hospital, so I'm going to choose the analogy of a hotel. So we have records which representing the stay at the hotel, like you having a room. So you usually reserve the room. It's reserved from, let's say, Monday 2 o'clock until Wednesday 10 o'clock. And so this is room assignment, as we call to say. This doesn't mean that you are actually in the room or using the room. But that's what the stay at a hotel or the length of stay is defined as in a hospital. And of course, as in a hotel, you have other amenities. You have, for example, a gym where you can go to, you can visit a restaurant, you can use a working space. So actually you as a guest are on all over the places, but we usually don't have timestamp for these visits where you are. So there's a record structure for it. It's called ADT records. I know they got it wrong as it's admission, transfer, discharge, which is the correct sequence. But I think they started with admission and discharge. We start and ending as we do in processes, and we find out what's happening in between. So we have different record types. We have an admission timestamp. We usually have a start and a stop time, so we know when this happens. We have transfers, which means patient is moved to another ward. That doesn't mean he is actually there. He can, in between, go to have a surgery. He can have a diagnostic imaging, and so on. So this length of stay doesn't have gaps in it. So basically, the start time is more or less reliable because you don't say it has arrived when it's not there. But what happens in between, we don't know. So maybe discharge time is not so good to evaluate, except the last discharge time, which usually seems to be quite correct because patient is leaving the hospital. So we try to set it right. All timestamps are manually set, so it's basically an interpretation of the nurses on the ward when he did really arrive. So usually that is not first priority to set your timestamp. First priority is to welcome the patient, take care of the patient, do 1,000 other things, and then sometimes later you think, oh, when did he arrive? Oh, I think it should be around 2 hours after shift change. So these are not, but it's the best data we have. We don't have other data, except if we would go and observe people. And so we had to leave it at. What's also special, as you can see, is for leave of absence and return of absence, we actually have 2 record types, each with a beginning and an ending. I don't know why they did it. We could probably you could merge them together. So then you have the actual leave of absence, and you can see shown with the length of stay that's actually the bed assignment or the stay in the hospital. That's the duration which usually we measure with length of stay. It doesn't mean that he has been the whole time on the ward. There were other issues. We actually only had the names of these units, but we didn't know which type of unit it was. So that didn't come out of the data. So we had to do again a lookup table. You say, well, you told me that before. It's quite different. In this case, it's not so important that we did it, but maybe how we do it. You can do it quite simple. You take all the data, you remove all duplicate data sets, and then add additional columns and fill in the kind of unit type. Either you know it by yourself or you have to ask questions, what kind of unit is it? How should we classify it? As there's no really classification. Or what I prefer nowadays is to use Power Query, because all the steps are documented and you know what you really did. And for example, if you do it again, then you can just run the program, which is actually a program. If you got an error, you know there's new data in it, for example, and you had to apply with, you can have to act on that. Then there was a sorting issue as well. Well, you say we can go with the timestamps. The timestamps are correct, so that everything is in correct order. But we had issues with the timestamps as well, which I'm not showing, but I will tell you more about it. Actually, if you only on leave, if you started a leave of absence, the end date of this record type is set to the future, somewhere in 9,999. And actually, it's stopped when it comes back. So we had timestamps with years which are far ahead and we probably won't experience anymore. And we also had issues because the source of this data is our clinical information systems. And the clinical information system, the data warehouse or the SAP does interpret data correctly. If I ask you, when does a day start? Starts it with 0000 or ends it with 2400? And actually the systems were working differently. So we had timestamps which were not correct, and we had to look up when did he really arrive. Was it a day later or a day earlier? And we had to correct those as well. And so I thought it was a good idea. We have a record number, and whenever you set a new timestamp, you get a new record type. And so I thought, well, maybe I could go with the record number, but there I had the issues. If I would sort it, I would get a wrong sequence, as you can see here, because it's treated alphabetically and not as numbers. So actually then we would have the sequence wrong. So what we did was actually to split the records, and now we could sort with record case and record sequence. Our assumption was wrong though, which I had to learn afterwards. It works if you're doing the timestamps whenever they occur. But sometimes they do corrections. They even delete some of these record types and add a new record type. So, oh no, this must have been wrong. I delete it. I add a new record type with a new date. Sequence is still correct with the timestamps, but with the record numbers, it's wrong. So actually we had to correct that afterwards. And what you also can see, because the task was to check admission times and to check discharge times, you actually see admission time when you have the record time leave of absence is actually a stop time, where in every other case it's actually the start time. So we had to deal with that. And the same for the discharge time. So if you want to have the discharge time and with the record type leave of absence, it's actually the start time and not the stop time. And discharge time is actually just an additional record telling you the same as the last transfer before. But you have to know if there has been a discharge. Otherwise, you don't know if it's just an unfinished case. Or and you need also to know if it's a leave of absence or if it's just a transfer to interpret where patients are going to. In this case, we could decide we don't need the leave of absence. So we just deleted that record type, but of course we had to filter these events. So we did it right because we wanted to show also the reason or the place where they were going to. But for timestamps, it was the easiest way to just cancel this record type. And you do all the analysis, and then suddenly you realize you may have to do it again. And then sometimes you are really in trouble because you are in a hurry, you don't document your steps, so you're not sure what you really have done. You think you're sure at the moment when you're doing it, but perhaps later in time you forget all about it, or maybe in the future perhaps someone else has to do it. So it's always good to make notes, to comment on them, and that's why I like tools which have some kind of recipe functions or documenting steps, such as Disco has, or even Power Query has, as you're writing a program and you can record the steps. They are recorded automatically, but of course you can adjust the meaning, and you can also add additional comments. So it's later in the future analysis, it's easier to reproduce it again. And so I want you to show these ADT records in Disco. So what we really could see was really the movements between units, and then show you even on other types, where we checked on admissions from intensive care units and intermediate care units. So actually the transfer between a high intensive care unit to a normal care unit. And what we find out with Disco, actually we had a lot of pathways going backwards, which shouldn't be in a treatment. Usually you go from a higher care unit to a lower care unit and then eventually being discharged. So it's not good if you're put backwards. So it means your status has been worse, and you need higher treatment. And we knew that this happened, but we didn't know how much this happened. And we also had reasons or explanations why it did happen. Because we are working on a very tight schedules, and you have always deviations in that schedules. You have emergencies coming in, individual patients staying a day longer than the average does, but planned, of course, is average. Of course, you adjust it from time to time, but there's always deviations. So pressure is high, and the units where the capacity of the units are not balanced to each other. So we have capacity in our operating theater, and we have bed capacity, and they're not well adjusted to each other. And every unit tries to fill its schedule, And so there's a lot of pressure from incoming patients. And so we try to move patients as soon as possible to a lower care unit. But sometimes it's too soon, so we could see that with disco. But for the purpose of my case, I just used disco with the Fuller filters. I could export the data then again, so I could find out which kind of unit was following each other. And that's what we did afterwards. I forgot to show you the recipe numbers. If you have the original data, you can have your filters, you can have recipes. Make sure that you write something useful, because it's, even if the filter is human readable, the good title might help you in the future. And then you can apply these, you can check on your selections and actually copy and filter, and then you have the structure which I showed you before. So it's always a good thing to have. I show you a sample of analysis where we see in one ward. And as you can see, if I jump forward, they look quite differently. So this is a unit where actually you had a lot of emergencies coming in, as represented by the yellow columns. And they also have a lot of same-day surgery patients. Same-day surgery means that you have your surgery on the day of your entry. That has nothing to do with priority or something like that, but we want to reduce the length of stay, so we don't let you enter the hospital one day before, as it used to be before when there were other regulations. Nowadays we try to have the patients on the day which they already actually they have the surgery, but of course there's issues with it. You have to make sure all necessary information is available. Patients have dropped their medication. Patients don't drink anything before entering the hospital. Or then you would have to reschedule the surgeries, which is not good either. And if you see the other unit, you see they have a lot more of the same-day surgery unit, because they are situated in another complex where they actually have these facilities where they can do same-day surgeries. And you can see they also don't have a lot of emergencies coming in. But you see that the admissions are usually during the weekdays, not on the weekends, which actually is a problem, because that leads to high peaks on the wards. So a high occupancy rate of beds, even overcrowded a little bit. And on Saturdays and Sundays, beds are empty. So the goal of this project is actually to level this a little bit out. For example, rescheduling surgeries. So surgery which has taken place on Tuesdays now maybe taking place on Thursday. But it's not so easy just to move it from one day to another, because you need to have the right surgeons, you have to have the right team, you have to make sure that they actually low care patients on Saturday and Sunday, because if they need a high level of care, they can't be put on these normal wards. Okay, so what I want you to take you home. It's always intentional, and then as told you before, it's important that you understand your data. And it helps you if you have a knowledge of the processes, or you can get people which have this knowledge. And it's also important to know where the data comes from, what issues are together with it. And even if it's coming from a clinical data warehouse systems. I had one example because we are merging these administrative cases because of DRG. If a patient, for example, re-enters the clinic within a certain amount of days, then it's considered as one case for the insurances. And so we actually merged the cases. And then we found out that the ADT records, which I've shown you before, are completely wrong in the data warehouse. They were correct in the original system, in the SAP, because what they do is to change the record type. So you had a discharge in case 1, and you had an admission in case 2, and if they merge it, discharge becomes a leave of absence, and admission becomes a return of absence, and they didn't actually change the record type within the data warehouse. So actually there was an error during extraction transformation. So in this case, we just took out these cases which produce garbage data, as it's only about in a low percentage rate. And so we could do that. And as you can see, keep on practicing. I could practice my barista skills during these coffee breaks when doing the data extractions. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of improvement, but there's still more improvement ahead. And I'm looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Think about your questions for Stefan. I start off with the first question. And so I was wondering, in the first case where you had the reorganization case, and they were moving from 9 to 3 divisions, and you ultimately broke it up into kind of from one to the other, right? Kind of from one department to another department, and just looking at from where to where this goes.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, for other types of questions, maybe not the questions that you analyzed, would it have been useful to look at the whole case? Like, for example, is one case handled within the complete division? Does that even happen? That like the whole case stays within the one division and doesn't cross like?
Well, actually, most of the cases are within one division if you exclude the enabling or supporting units. That we could prove also, which actually you could see quite nicely because there were quite a lot of loops afterwards.
Yeah.
So most of the cases actually happen inside the clinic. But the more complex cases, they need to be treated interdisciplinary. And so we have that as well. You also have a lot of variation in duration. A normal outpatient case is between 1 and maybe 3-5 days, depending on the unit which you are in. So in ophthalmology or in neck units, you usually have a very short length of stay, usually 1 or 2 days, which shows that we can't treat all clinics the same. And on behalf of we also have very complex cases, as we have a university hospital. So we have cases that stay with us for more than a year or even longer. And so actually these cases are very difficult, but they're interesting in kind of treating people involved. They're very complex, but they are not interesting financially because you don't get the money for it. And that's a problem for us because if we didn't have, I think this is about 1 or 2% of all the cases, if we didn't have them, we would be profitable with the system which is now existing. But with these cases, we are not profitable anymore.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, someone else has a question for Stefan. No question. Maybe you need to think about it a little bit more. Okay, so this has been very clear. Oh yeah, one question over there. One moment, let's wait for the
microphone. For these first projects you did, did you get any help from outside, or did you just learn it yourself? Did you use?
Actually, I did a lot to learn it by myself, with the help, of course, Fluxicon, especially their process mining book, as it's called, a process handbook, where we could read a lot out of it. And also these online courses helped a lot, which I think they were provided by Will van der Alst. And there's also one course with dealing with data in healthcare. So that helped a lot. But within our hospital, I'm actually the only one which is using this mining software. Actually, there's a lot of companies coming to the hospitals, like Celonis or SAP, with Signavio now, which they bought Signavio, and they tell you we can do a lot with process mining. The head title is Mine for Gold, so you can find some money if you do the analysis right. But they say it's very easy. We have standard connectors. We can give you fast results. And we had a case with the supply chain management. We didn't even get the data from the IT department. They say, well, we don't have time. There's a lot of customization. So standard connectors did not work. And then it's not useful for us to buy a software which maybe has other advantages like live monitoring or providing dashboards or live dashboards, as we don't get the data. So I decided to go for this because it's more for analysis. But of course, we have also data scientists within our hospital. They do a lot of extractions from our applications, but we have a lot of applications. If you count all of them with all versions, a couple of years ago, there were over 4,000 different applications. So providing different data from a standalone system to a hospital-wide system. And also the data is very different. For example, in the labs, they are very highly automated, so the timestamps are set by the systems. So if an analysis is ready, or if they send it, or if it's stuck, we have very precise time measurements. In the operating room, we also have quite good timestamps because it's a very, very expensive resource. So they got adjusted to it and found out maybe it could be of help with the scheduling. But with other schedulings, we only have manual timestamps and they don't even set it. So we go, if we have just a normal scheduled date, we just go with planned data. We assume that it might be right, but of course there is deviation from it, but it's never recorded. So physicians or nurses actually don't set these timestamps, which is a problem for us. So we actually have to interview them, but then it's guesstimations. If you talk with 5 people, you get a whole different process. I've done that once in a lab. It was about staffing of the unit which gets all the samples. And staffing was usually between 1 and 3 people. And if I asked them, some people said, well, 1 is more than enough. I don't have to do much. One said, well, if I'm alone, I have no chance to work at all. I need at least 3 so we can handle the load. And so we actually had to go and make some observations. And then we see, well, there are times which probably 2 is good, especially if the samples from outside are coming in, which are not from the hospital itself. And then it's good to put two people together. And in other times, you only need 1 or not even 1. So we try to adjust it with the adjustment of the shifts, not without hiring or firing.
All right, so if there are no more questions, then let's thank Stefan again. Thanks so much.
blah, blah, blah.